Berkeley as an academic advisor. I want to thank Chelsea, Laura, Sarah, and Brian so much for joining us today. And yeah, definitely want to thank Kelly so much as well for helping to arrange the event over the past day, or over the past 2 days actually, along with Serena and Noel from the Associated Student Government at UC Berkeley for helping to arrange and publicize the event too. Yeah, let's see. Today we have Chelsea joining us from Berkeley Law, Laura joining us from Boston College, Sarah joining us from the University of Michigan, and Brian joining us from UC Hastings Law. And yeah, let's see, the format of today's event is we're slated to go from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And I have 6 pre-prepared questions that will go around in sort of a round robin fashion and get to ask everybody the questions. And then subsequent to that, there should be time for students to ask questions that are on your minds. Yeah, I'm thinking a good way to do that will be to either raise your hand in the Zoom screen and ask those questions yourselves, or feel free to chat them in and we can address them that way as well. Yeah, let's see. So for starters, I guess with the first question, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then dive right into the question, we can do that. And yeah, for this first question, I'll start with Chelsea. From Chelsea from Berkeley. Chelsea, what is the profile of a competitive law school applicant, and what are some ways that students can demonstrate themselves to be strong candidates for law school?
Great, thanks everybody for having me. I want to apologize, my internet connection may not be very strong today. I am on campus, but as some of you, or probably all of you on this panel know, we've been having some intermittent Wi-Fi issues. As I said, my name is Chelsea Hackett. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director of Admissions for Outreach and Recruitment here at Berkeley Law. So we're right across the street from iHouse and Cafe Strada if you're on campus. The building is also open now to the public, so you're welcome to come walk around and do a self-guided tour if you wanted to swing by. But to get on to the question, this is probably one of my least favorite questions, because to be a competitive applicant, it can look so many different ways. Of course, having a really strong academic record, so strong grades in undergraduate, but also if you've gone on to graduate school or a PhD program, those of course are very important, as is a strong or competitive LSAT score. But that is by all means not the only things that we look at. So we're also looking at what did you do while in school or while in graduate school? Were you a leader in student organizations? Were you involved? Did you work part-time or volunteer? Or did you do internships? Did you do research? So all of those kinds of things can go into creating a really strong applicant profile. And I would say to demonstrate that, take advantage of the space that we and other schools would allow in the application. So at Berkeley, we allow for a 4-page personal statement. We don't have a length on the resume, so really kind of take up that space and don't self-filter, don't look at your experience and say, okay, I don't think this is relevant to law school, because you never know who's reading your application, what they may find interesting or what would set you apart. So yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice, is put it all out there, don't self-filter, take up the space that is allotted to you in the application.
Thanks so much, Chelsea. And yeah, next, Laura, if you'd like to introduce yourself and address any points about what makes a competitive law school applicant and ways that students can demonstrate themselves as strong applicants.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Laura Timmerman. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions and Financial Aid out on the East Coast at Boston College Law School. I've been in admissions and financial aid for almost 5 years now, so I'm not sure if I might be one of the newbies on the panel. But in any event, to answer the question, what makes somebody a strong applicant, I would agree with many of the remarks that Chelsea said. The whole entire application process really is an exercise in your professional judgment. So be ready. You don't have to be the applicant right out of the gate. If you're graduating in 2020, perhaps you're not quite ready. As Chelsea said, what did you do in school? Did you volunteer? Did you work? We're human beings that are reading your files. We'll read everything you send us, but we want to get to know you. So if there is something else you'd like to tell us, Please do so in an addendum to your application. If there's not space on our application, we will read everything that you send us, and we do want to get to know you beyond your personal statement in other pieces, obviously, of your application, your letters of recommendation. Form a nice relationship with the professor. If you're just coming straight from school undergrad, that will speak to your academic ability and how you have performed at school. So those would be my recommendations. Again, just it's your professional judgment. Put your best foot forward, as Chelsea said.
And thank you so much, Laura. Next, Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself and share your insights and perspectives on that question.
Sure. I guess we're going in alpha order, and so the two Z's are going to have to compete here. I don't think I've ever been on a panel with another Z last name. It's a very special moment for me. So I'm Sarah Zierfoss. I'm the Dean of Admissions at Michigan Law School. And actually, yesterday was my 21st anniversary of being Dean of Admissions, which I didn't really realize till someone happened to ask me, like, how long have you been doing this? And I was like, oh, wow, a long time. Anyway, so I think both Chelsea and Laura have given wonderful advice that I agree with, but I spent the day actually right up until now reading applications. And so I feel like I'm coming hot off of with lots of advice on this. So I feel like, especially at this stage, towards the end of the season, I feel like we see a lot of applications where people are rushing to get them in. And people are their own worst enemies when they're rushing this way. So I'd say give yourself time, because if a school is asking for you to write, an essay, an optional essay, or giving you that opportunity, take that opportunity. If they are asking, for everything that they are asking from you, take all those opportunities and do your best possible job with them that you can. So don't omit items that you could include. Make sure that you are thinking of this from the outsider's perspective, someone who doesn't know you. Are you answering all the questions? Is everything clear? Have you, if you're not working right now and you're out of school, have you explained what you have been doing? I just, all day long, I feel like I read so many applications where they were close. There were people who I think could do the work, who might be able to contribute to the law school and be great people, but I just didn't get to know enough about them because they didn't take advantage of all the opportunities. So that is, as Laura said, we read every word, and so your efforts will not be wasted. Now, it doesn't mean you'll get into every school if you do that, because schools are making lots of choices, but you're giving yourself the best shot, and there's no point in applying unless you're going to do that. So that's my big advice right now.
And Sarah, thank you so much for that as well. And Brian.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Serbia. I'm Director of Admissions at UC Hastings Law, right across the bay from you in Berkeley. And it's great to be here today. And I must sympathize with Dean Zierfoss. I'm usually not last, believe it or not. I actually have a twin brother whose name begins with M. And so usually I'm next to last. So, but anyway, I appreciate being one of two Z's on the panel this morning. It is pretty unusual, actually, or this afternoon, excuse me. But getting back to the question, I think my colleagues all had really good comments. And I guess I would say that, being a competitive applicant, I think is a mix of both tangible and intangible qualities. And I think we've mentioned some of those tangible qualities. I would emphasize strong writing skills as one that I think is uniformly appreciated by people in the admissions profession. Also, good organization skills, attention to detail in the application, making sure you're sending the right personal statement to the right school, or maybe even tailoring your personal statement to the institution if you can do that. But there's also, I think, some intangible qualities there too, and I think I call that kind of reading between the lines with the applications and trying to get a sense of whether you feel this applicant is, if we admit her or him, will they be will they be a good fit for the institution? Will they be a productive and happy kind of community member for 3 years? Will they be an alum who maybe gives back in the future? And I know those things are sometimes hard to tell, but I think if you really carefully analyze an application, you can sometimes figure out which people are going to be the best fit for your school. Like Dean Zierfoss, I've been at Hastings I haven't been at Hastings as long as Dean Zierfoss has been at Michigan, but I've been here for almost 12 years. And so you really get to know your institution pretty well. And you get to know kind of who, which applicants with which qualities kind of are gonna make the best students at your school.
Thank you for that as well. Yeah, let's see. Moving on to the next question, in an effort to not have folks always answer questions at the end based on their last name. Brian, would you, if you'd like to start with it, with this question?
Sure.
Yeah, let's see. And this will be the question for all panelists. Does your institution take a holistic view of multiple LSAT scores, or do you take the average of all the scores? And would you have any specific advice related to the LSAT that you'd like to share with our students?
Sure. We do not average the scores, and so we do take a holistic view of the scores. We can see all your scores, but we use the highest score for our final decision when we make the admissions decision, and also we would use the higher score for merit scholarship decisions as well. And I think just in terms of looking at the scores, I think that we all agree that sometimes people just have bad days, and so sometimes if there's a score that's low and it goes up for a few points, we just know that you prepared better for the second time around. Some people ask, is there a disadvantage to taking it more than once? No, on the contrary, I think that it shows that you want to do better and you think you can do better. So taking it more than once is absolutely fine. Sometimes people ask, is there such a thing as too many times? I believe with LSAC, they only let you take it 5 times in a 2-year period. So that does limit students to some extent. But multiple scores, I think, 4 or 5 scores are probably would be more than usual, but not enough to, at least for me, like say that it would be a red flag. I think if you take it like more than maybe 4 times and you keep getting the same score, then maybe, it's time to stop, and you wouldn't maybe want to prolong the agony for yourself or for the admissions reviewers in that sense. But generally, I think with LSAT, general advice would be just give yourself a lot of time to prepare. Try not to cram. If you don't do well the first time, then try and take it again and see how much better you can do.
Thank you so much. And Sarah, to this question, does Michigan take a holistic view of multiple LSAT scores, or is there an average taken? And what advice surrounding the LSAT would you provide?
So we do, as Brian mentioned, we see all the scores and we see an average, which the Law School Admissions Council puts together, and we're looking at all in context. I might dissent a little bit from what Brian said. I think there are times where it makes sense to take the LSAT 4 or 5 times, but it's rare. It is far, in general, when we're seeing that many scores, you're often seeing very similar scores. And that tells me that the taker is someone who might be having trouble self-assessing, right? So you've gotten 5 166s, but you really want to have a 176, and you just keep taking it despite there not being any real evidence for thinking you're going to get the 176. And that says something to me about people's openness and self-awareness, right? And so that concerns me. So I guess I am leery of that pattern of test taking. And I would say, though, if you're taking it multiple times, and you have scored much differently, that's a different scenario than what I'm talking about, number one. Number two, you may have really good reasons why you took it maybe it wasn't just like a shot in the dark, like I'm just going to keep going until I can get this score. And then it would be very useful to include an addendum to explain that to us, like what happened. And it can be also useful even if you do get a markedly different score, if you can explain that too, if you have an explanation, maybe it's just good day, bad day, and I don't really know, that's fine. But if you have something you can point to, like this day I was very sick, or this day I was late, or this day, the computer broke, or, I feel like I've read so many explanations of all the things that can go wrong when you're taking the LSAT. It's really quite remarkable. But that can be helpful to tell us too. And I really appreciate having that information. So that would be one of the little things that you can include that rounds out the information that we are assessing when we're looking at your application.
And thank you so much for that advice. And and Laura, for Boston College, how does Boston College view LSATs multiple times taken? And what advice related to the LSAT would you like to pass along?
Sure, thank you. I would agree with comments from both Brian and from Sarah. At Boston College Law School, we will see all of your test scores. We will use your highest score, and that obviously, as Brian said, also we will use your highest score for our merit aid as well. But again, as Sarah mentioned, you know, it gives me pause when I see an applicant who has taken the test over and over again and really has had no, you know, great change in their score. So that when I see that in a file, that actually gives me pause, and I kind of wonder. But you know, as a reader of files, and as Sarah said, I've been reading files all day today as well. You do get lots of explanations as to what happened, and it's important, especially for me, if you've had a very large market increase in a score. For example, if you went up 9 or 10 points from one test to another. You know, I've seen, you know, I was sick with COVID and, you know, lots of different explanations. But again, we're human. We'd like to know what went on. So if you have taken the test multiple times and you have had a large increase in your test score, say 9 to 10 points, we may even reach out to you and ask what happened if you don't tell us why. So that would be my advice. Just one more quick thing is that at Boston College Law School, we have started to accept the GRE score. And last year was the GRE test, and last year was the first year that we started accepting that. You can apply with the GRE only. If you have taken the LSAT and the GRE, we are required by the American Bar Association to use your LSAT score.
Oh, yeah, and thank you for that information as well. And yeah, and Chelsea, at Berkeley, how does Berkeley Law view the LSATs in terms of averages or holistically? And yeah, what advice would you like to pass along?
Sure. So as my colleague suggested, we also see all of your scores, including all cancellations, all absences. But again, we would take the highest score, give you the benefit of that highest score, even if that's not the most recent one that you've received. As my colleagues were talking, I was trying to think of advice that they haven't already mentioned, because I feel like they pretty much hit on all of my advice. I guess the one thing I would add is that, you know, if you are practicing at a certain score and the actual score that you get is only like 1 or 2 points lower, then I feel like at that point it might not be worth it to retake the LSAT, because you know, if you're looking at LSAT and you're aware of their score bands, or basically their standard deviation is about 2 to 3 points in either direction. So in a lot of ways, a 166 is the same exact as a 167, 168. And so if you're betting on a score increase of only like 2 points, then I don't know if I would advise somebody to retake it at that point. If it's like, you know, you're scoring at a 170 and then you take the actual test and get a 160, and then you're, you know, pretty sure that you can do better because something happened, or, you know, didn't prepare as much, then, you know, by all means take it again, and we're not probably going to bat an eyelash at that. But again, the kind of margin of like 1 or 2 points, it would be up to you, but I don't know that I would spend the money and sit for hours to take that exam again.
No, yeah, thanks so much, Chelsea. Yeah, let's see, and on to our next question. If your institution offers an early decision program, what are some advantages to applying early? And yeah, this time I'll start with Laura.
I'll be quick because we do not offer a early action or early decision program.
Okay. Yeah.
Quickly rolling admissions here at Boston College Law School.
Yeah, and if you'd like to speak a bit about that, yeah, we'd appreciate the information.
Sure. We will read files in the order that they are complete. So you will get a status checker. Once your application is received, you'll get a status checker link, and you'll be able to track your application. So first it's application received. Within a day or two, your application is either complete or not complete, or put on hold because we see that you're taking a future LSAT exam. But again, you'll be able to track your application with your status checker. Once your application is complete, the next step would be that it goes into review, and we read files in the order that they are complete. So no early decision or no early action for us.
Oh, yeah, thanks so much for that information about rolling admissions. And yeah, Sarah, does Michigan have an early decision program?
We do. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I will say in general, in law school admissions, even the schools that do have early admissions programs, it's not the same factor that it is in the undergrad process, which it seems like it is a big, fat, hairy deal for undergrad admissions. And in law schools, it tends to be a much smaller part of our admissions process. So something less than 10% of our class tends to get admitted by early decision. So that's like 30 some people. And there is an advantage to applying early. It's showing your intention to enroll at any given school. And that's schools like that. That creates some certainty for us. That helps us with managing our enrollment. So at Michigan, there's probably, we get more than 6,000 applications typically. There are a lot of people who apply who I think seem great and I think could do the work, who I just don't have room for. If you're applying early decision and you seem great and I think you could do the work, I probably have room for you because it's a much smaller part of our process. So there is an advantage there. It's not gigantic. And despite telling you this, I want to emphasize so strongly that you should not apply early decision unless you are really sure that getting into this school is the thing you want more than anything, that it is really your first choice, because you won't have the opportunity to compare different schools. You won't have the opportunity to compare, like you'd get financial aid usually from Michigan, but you won't get the chance to compare that package with what you might have gotten from Berkeley, or you are really restricting your choices, and you just shouldn't do it unless it's your first choice. It's not good for you. It's not good for us. So we don't want you to come to Michigan, against your will, because you applied early decision. So think carefully.
No, and thank you for that great advice as well. And yeah, Brian, at UC Hastings, is there an early decision program?
So we do not have an early decision program either. So I would echo Laura in saying that, nothing to worry about with this at Hastings. But I would emphasize that even without an early decision program, it is definitely to your advantage to apply earlier in the cycle. We get about half of our applications before the end of the year, and about the other half come in, between January and the end of March. And you really want to be in the front of the parade when it comes to law school admissions council or law school admissions applications. So we have a lot more room between October and December than we do between January and April. And so, to be really put yourself in the best position, try and have your applications in by, I would, encourage you to have them in by October, November if you can.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. And Chelsea, yes. Speaking about Berkeley's programs, is there early decision at Berkeley? And if so, what would the advantages be? And if not, could you speak a bit about Berkeley's admissions process?
Yeah, so we do have a binding early decision program. So that deadline is typically mid-November. So you would have to know that you'd want to come to Berkeley and submit your application for binding early decision by mid-November. Some of the benefits are the application fee is waived. If you are admitted through our binding early decision program, then you are guaranteed a $25,000 scholarship per year. So that's 75 grand across all 3 years. Of course, you know earlier, so you're notified in early December, so you kind of can start making preparations to move. You can apply for housing a bit earlier. But yeah, I just really want to echo what my colleague at Michigan said about, you have to be sure that you'd want to come to Berkeley and that you would be happy receiving only $25,000 a year. Because while we could increase it due to, strong financial need, you don't have that negotiation power. You can't say, hey, Michigan gave me 3/4 scholarship to their school. You can't do that because you're already bound to us. And so you don't need to apply to any school binding early decision, but if you do, you want to be 100% sure that you would go there kind of no matter what.
No, thank you. And this next question, ties in quite a bit with what you just mentioned, Chelsea. So I'll start with you for this one. Do applicants need to apply separately for scholarships, or will they receive automatic consideration through the admissions process? And when would applicants get notified about those funding opportunities?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both at Berkeley. So all admitted students are automatically considered for merit-based gift aid. So that's what we call scholarships, so you don't have to pay back. So there's not a separate application just for our general merit-based gift aid process. So we sometimes will tell students, treat your application to law school as your first scholarship application as well. We do have some named scholarships for certain populations that you can apply for in the application process. So for example, we have a public interest scholarship for students who are interested in going into public interest. And we have what we call our Berkeley Law Opportunity Scholarship, which is for first generation college students. And that one has an earlier deadline. It requires an essay. So in some ways, yes, that is a separate application. But typically you do that at the same time as you apply. And then if you are admitted and want to be considered for need-based gift aid, then you would need to fill out our in-house financial aid application. So we call it our Supplemental Gift Aid Questionnaire, and that gets sent to you after you're admitted. And if you fill that out, then we would do basically another holistic review of your application to assess for merit-based aid and need-based aid if you filled out the SGA. And then those initial gift aid offers are usually sent definitely not at the same time that you're admitted. So they're typically sent from mid-December through the end of March.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Laura, at Boston College, do applicants apply separately for scholarships, or would automatic consideration be given through the admissions process, and when would applicants get notified?
Sure. So we do not have any need-based aid at Boston College Law School. It's strictly merit-based aid. So as Chelsea said, all of our admitted students are considered for merit-based scholarship, and there is no separate application. At Boston College, first you are admitted, your scholarship award letter will come separately. So we will start rolling those scholarship awards out. The Financial Aid Committee is meeting now, and we will start to roll out those financial aid award notifications, merit-based aid, to our admitted students shortly. And that will continue through the end of March, so that students will then have time to decide, make their decisions. And for our first deposit is April 15th.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and Sarah, in Michigan, what are the processes related to scholarships and admissions, and how they're tied together?
So everyone is automatically considered for grant aid at the time or shortly after they're admitted. So our process is you get admitted, then your file goes to the financial aid office and they review you, and they will send you, beginning in December, they will send you a letter saying whether you got an award or whether you didn't. And then that happens about every week or two after, on a rolling basis throughout the season. And if you don't get an outright award to begin with, which many people do not, then they provide very comprehensive instructions about what comes next, and that involves a competing aid process as well as need-based applications. And I would say applying for law school is complicated. Applying for financial aid is extra complicated. It's very fraught. All law schools cost a lot of money, and it is very understandably a source of enormous anxiety for applicants. So we spend a lot of time talking to people, trying to explain to you that this is what it will look like. This is what our debt management program is. So if you graduate with debt and you go into a lower paying job, this is how that works. This is how summer funding works. We walk you through all the different resources, what this will mean for you in terms of a monthly payback and exactly what you're getting into, and try to be as disinterested of counselors as we can be, because chances are if you're talking to us, you probably have a lot of compelling different offers in front of you, and there's no one right answer. So that's one thing I would say too, when you're in this position. Don't let someone tell you, oh, you should never pay full freight, or oh, you should always go to the highest ranked school even if they didn't give you any money. These are complicated decisions, and don't let anyone make you feel like there's an obvious answer and you should do it the way they say. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that advice as well. And Brian, at Hastings, yeah, how do scholarships work, need-based and/or merit-based?
So our process is pretty similar to Berkeley's. We do award general merit scholarships that are based on undergraduate GPA and highest LSAT or GRE score. We actually do that upon admission, so we combine the communications into one. So if you're admitted to Hastings and you're eligible for a general merit scholarship, then we would actually tell you in the acceptance email. Um, some people are eligible for merit scholarships, and other admitted students are eligible for need-based grants. And if you're invited to apply for a need-based grant, we'll also tell you that in the acceptance letter. But we do require an in-house supplemental financial aid form to do need analysis in our financial aid office before we can tell you whether you would actually be receiving the grant. So that's an additional step for the need-based aid. We also run kind of a second round of scholarship reconsideration a little bit later in the cycle. So anyone who's been admitted and who's been offered either a scholarship or a grant can apply for a little bit more money that comes from one of our named funds or one of our endowed funds. So it's a little bit more of a matching process because a lot of those funds do have kind of donor idiosyncrasies that the donor wants to kind of include in the terms of the award. So it's a bit more of a matching process, but there's some supplemental money that can come out of that process. And then I would say, just to complicate things further, because it is a pretty complicated process, after your first year, I think most schools also have pots of money for second and third year students that you can apply for separately as a 2L and a 3L. I know that's true at Hastings. But fortunately, you don't have to go through the whole kind of 1L rigmarole again in terms of like applying for general merit aid. But there are some additional opportunities available for you maybe during your second and third years of law school.
Oh, great. Thank you for that information too. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, there's two more questions on the docket, and then we'll be able to open it up to student questions. And this is shifting gears a bit. And yeah, let's see. Yeah, in the interest of spreading the first answers around again. Yeah, Brian, I'll start with you on this question as well. Yeah, how does Hastings support post-grad goals of Hastings students? And could you speak briefly about career prospects for Hastings students and which sectors of law students from Hastings tend to work in?
Sure. There's a couple different ways that we support career aspirations and career goals. And I think the most obvious solution or option for all of our law schools will be our career development office. So all law schools have a very active career development office, and they start working with students even in their first year on programming and polishing and interview skills and resume polishing and negotiation skills and things like that. All sorts of programming that you can start taking advantage of in your first year. And then they also are kind of the hub on campus for searching for summer jobs, after your first year, summer jobs after your second year. So it's not only for your jobs after graduation, but also for those 2 summers in between your 3 years of law school. So most career offices will also kind of manage or host organized interview programs. They often have usually acronyms. Most law schools call them kind of on-campus interviews or early interview programs. So we'll just say OCI for short. That's the most common terminology, I think. And OCI takes place every August at our law school. And it's kind of a program for people that are interviewing for summer associate positions after their second year of law school. So you're actually interviewing for a summer job after your second year of law school, basically almost a year in advance. And then we have another separate interview program for public interest career people that want to do public interest or public service. And that's called PIPS for public interest, public service. And that takes place each February. But I would say that in addition to the career office, where, as I said, it's going to be the hub of on-campus employment information, you don't want to overlook some other really potentially valuable sources of job leads for you. And I would say that among the most valuable places to find job kind of leads and networking opportunities would be through your clinical faculty, who are often also practicing lawyers or who were practicing lawyers before they joined the clinical faculty. Also through your externship directors and deans in your law schools too. They're very well networked in the area for placing externs with legal offices and with judges, and in some cases even maybe a corporate counsel externship program. So don't be afraid to kind of spread your net farther than just the career office. I mean, that's definitely where you should start. But I think you'll find that there are many other people on campus who can help you with your job search in addition to the people in the career office.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you for those insights. And speaking about Hastings specifically, what are some of the main sectors that you see Hastings students work in after graduation?
Yes, good question. For us, our percentages are pretty consistent across the last decade or so. So normally we send about 55% of our graduates to firms, to law firms of all shapes and sizes, and mostly in California, but in some other parts of the country as well. And then the next kind of big chunk of graduates would be our public interest and kind of public sector and government graduates. And that usually is about 25 to 30% of a graduating class will go work directly for nonprofits or government agencies at the local, state, or federal level. And then the category after that, which I find intriguing a little bit, and I think this may be kind of a Bay Area kind of thing, but we send about 15% of our graduates right into business and industry. And I think I don't know other schools, employment statistics offhand, but I've always been struck by that statistic as being a fairly high one for a law school to send that many graduates directly into business and industry. But I think because the tech industry and the fact that there are so many startups in tech and biotech and so forth in the Bay Area, I think that really contributes to that number because a lot of those smaller startups especially are looking for people with a JD who have that essential legal skill set who can kind of be on their startup team and look at the contracts, things like that. So I think that's basically why we see that 15% going right into business and industry. And then finally, we also have a usually 15 to 20 graduates a year that do judicial clerkships after law school. They can mostly be at the state and federal level. Of course, especially the federal clerkships can be extremely competitive. So that is just a great kind of opportunity to pursue for people that have done well in law school.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thanks for sharing that information as well. Yeah, Sarah, yeah, same question. At Michigan, what are some ways that Michigan supports the postgraduate goals of students? And then as well, yeah, where do you see career prospects and sectors of work that Michigan graduates go toward?
Yeah, we have 10 attorney counselors in our Office of Career Planning, 10 people who are attorneys, many of them alum, who have practiced for a number of years and now are giving advice to students about getting jobs. They all have specialties, so some of them focus on private sector law firms, some of them focus on government, some of them focus on public interest. One person focuses on working internationally because a lot of our students are interested. Michigan has a very strong international law program, so lots of people want to go abroad. And then we also have a judicial clerkship advisor for people doing clerkships. We also have a faculty panel of people who support people who go into clerkships because about 20% of our graduates tend to go into clerkships immediately after they graduate from law school. We send people. One of the things that's unusual about Michigan is, we're in a small legal market in the middle of the country, and as a result, most people aren't staying in Michigan. About 10% of our graduates stay in Michigan, and about 20% start from Michigan. So we're exporting people. The largest number go to New York City. That's about 20 to 25%, and then 10 to 15% are going to DC, Chicago, a mix of LA and San Francisco, and then smaller markets across the country. So Texas, Pacific Northwest, Minneapolis is a popular one. So you really have a huge footprint, a lot of opportunities all over the world if you are looking for a job from Michigan. About 60%, slightly more than 60% of our graduates are going into big law, private law firms and the largest ones. I said 20% going to clerkships. Typically 15% are going either to government or public interest, and it just kind of varies. Some years government's more attractive, some years public interest is more attractive. And then the remaining, I guess that's 60, 80, 90, yeah, 5% is a mishmash. Some going to, it just varies year to year. Some going on to academia too, a small percentage doing that, getting PhDs or just going directly into teaching. But that's pretty rare. I think that addresses all the things you asked about, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for that breakdown. And Laura, for Boston College, what are ways that BC supports students looking forward toward careers, and what are some general sectors that students from Boston College go on to?
Sure. So similar to my colleagues, we do have a fabulous career services department at Boston College Law School. They actually will start working with you as an incoming law student shortly after you start law school as a 1L. They start what they call as 1L boot camp. And it basically involves helping you with your resume and cover letters and getting that all tweaked, because they're starting to work with you shortly after you start regarding the possibilities of what you're going to do after the summer after your 1L year. So they're great. We have a staff of we just hired actually a few more people down in career services, but in any event, I think right now we have a staff of 8 employees down in our career services department. But in any event, our most recent class, 67% of the graduating students went to work for law firms. And again, as Brian said, various sizes, small, medium, and large law firms. Approximately 15% of our students have gone into government and public interest work. About 12% into business and high tech in the Boston area. Of course, we have Cambridge, we have a lot of hospitals and high tech in our area. And then I would say about 7% into judicial clerkships. And again, as Sarah mentioned, we do have career services professionals that are specific to certain industries. So, we have someone who will help you if you're going into government work or public interest. If you need assistance paying back some of your debt because your salary is maybe not going to be as high as a classmate who's going to go work for a big law firm. We have some loan repayment assistance programs and things like that. But in any event, the career services department is fabulous. We want you to be successful. We want you to pass the bar and get a great job when you finish. So they will work with you and they will assist you all 3 years and beyond. Our alumni are very good to us and they want to hire our graduates. And speaking to where our graduates go after law school, really to all the major cities. I mean, we do have a lot of students that stay on the East Coast, either Boston, New York, DC, but we do have many students that go to Chicago, and we do have a lot of alum out in LA, in the LA area and out on the West Coast as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. And Chelsea, for Berkeley, what are some ways that Berkeley Law supports students in their career searches during law school? And what are some sectors that Berkeley will send students off to work in afterwards?
Yeah, I think my colleagues gave a great overview of how a career development office can help students. So, similar to all of the other schools represented on this panel, we have a number of attorney counselors, and they are kind of assigned by area. So we have some that are specific for public interest in the public sector, some for the private sector. We have a director of judicial clerkships. And so they put on events throughout the year to kind of help with the job search, whether that's summer associate positions, whether that's interview prep, resume polishing, things of that nature. In terms of our outcomes, we send a little over 60% to law firms, the majority of which are big law firms. About 30%, a little over 30% go into some type of public service, whether that's judicial clerkships, positions in the government or public interest organizations. And then the other kind of 5-ish% will go into some sort of academia or business or the military. In terms of the geographic breakdown, the vast majority, about 2/3, will stay in California, at least for their first position after graduating. But then our other largest markets are New York and DC.
No, great. Yeah, thanks so much. And let's see the last prepared question here. Laura, I'll start with you for this last question. for us non-traditional age students who have re-entered college, undergraduate school, and for students who've taken a gap year or years after undergraduate graduation to develop professionally. Yeah, what are your thoughts on taking this kind of time for professional development as opposed to applying directly to law school, to go to law school right out of senior year?
Sure, that's a great question. And we prefer students who have taken some time, actually. I mean, of course, we do have those students who are bound and determined to come straight to law school right out of undergrad. And that's not a problem if that's your intent and your goal. But we do like to have a mix in our class, because we feel that students who have taken some time and either volunteered or worked, or whatever you decide to do in your gap year, your time away, we just feel that they bring something different to our classroom. Having said that, we do also have professors who read applications for us. And so they've got a different lens on reading a file than somebody sitting in the admissions and financial aid office. They're looking to see what you're going to bring to my classroom. So I think a student or an applicant who has taken some time off and has used their time wisely, let us know what you have done. Obviously, we'll see from your resume if you've worked what you've been doing, but specifically for students who maybe not have worked. And I mean, I read a file of a student who actually just did some travel, was a little bit burnt out from school, and knew that he was bound and determined to go to law school, but really just needed a year off before he, started back into the classroom in the rigors of law school. So to me, that's a positive thing. But again, everyone's different. You. So if you're wanting to come right straight from undergrad, that's completely fine. But if you've taken some time off, we're interested in knowing what you've done with your time.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, Sarah, speaking to that question, yeah, for non-traditional age undergraduate students or folks taking some time between undergraduates and school and law school, what would be some advice you would provide?
Well, I think I'd say it is the non-traditional age nomenclature may not be apt right now, in the sense that I think most schools, lots of students do take time off before they enroll. So at Michigan, I think last year it was about 75% had taken a year or more. It's not usually a ton of time. It's usually a year or 2 or 3, and 25% come straight through typically. And our average age is about 24. So non-traditional age, I guess, would really be for us like 30 and up, right? That's pretty unusual. But I would say I think the you is the exact right advice. Right? So if you feel like you are ready to go, then you are ready to go, right? But if you have any hesitation, if you're like, I'm not quite sure, the law schools are always going to be there. So wait until you're ready, because law school's a lot of work. It's 3 years. It's challenging. It's exciting. I think it is one of the great educational experiences that you can have, but it isn't easy. So it is a lot easier to get through it and do well and feel enthusiastic if you are ready to go when you get there. So don't feel like you are on a treadmill and this is just the only way to go is to go right to law school. Right. I think that is all I have to say about that.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, Brian, yeah, speaking about potential gap years or going right from undergraduate school onto law school, yeah, what insights would you like to pass along?
It's funny. I think it's a great question, and I guess my response to this is that I hear a lot over the years from people who say, I wish I'd taken a year or two off. I've almost never heard, I wish I'd gone straight through. So I would agree, I think, with my colleagues that I think there's a certain amount of maturity and wisdom that can come out of taking a year or two off and either working or traveling or doing whatever you need to do to kind of get yourself to that place of centeredness in order for you to start law school. Because when you start law school, that it is hard to get off the train. Your academic years are busy, your summers are busy, and then you take the bar, and then you pass the bar, and then you go start working, and you're on that train for many years to come. But Our profile is pretty similar to Michigan's in that we have about 75% of our students who take at least a year off, and maybe about 25% of the people who come straight through. And many of those people who come straight through are very successful. They're very focused. But keep in mind that when you're looking at jobs and competing for jobs, summer jobs and so forth during law school, you want to be in the best position. And for somebody who's had like a year or two of work experience before law school, they can sometimes be in a stronger position for some of those jobs. So that's kind of another thing to keep in mind. But let me just kind of reemphasize the you is you, you are you, and don't let just statistics or something else, let your heart guide you to what the right pathway for you.
Thank you. And Chelsea, speaking from Berkeley's perspectives on taking time between undergraduate school and law school, what insights would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my colleagues have really covered everything that I could possibly say on this topic. I mean, our median entering age last year was 25, and we have over 10% of last year's incoming class are over 30. So it is very common for people to take a year or years off. And, we read applications for people who have had 10, 15-year careers and then want to transition to law school later in life. And so it's not a race. As Sarah said, law school is always going to be here. You can really go at any time. So if there's anything that you want to do, even again, just travel the world, just take a break from everything, do it before law school, before you apply. There's really no rush.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all this information and advice. Looks like we have about 9 minutes or so. Student attendees, I'd absolutely open up to questions. And please feel free to put them into chat and I'll be able to read them out. Or if you'd like to ask your question yourself, please feel free to raise your hand in Zoom and ask the question. Yeah, let's see. And Noelle writes, kind of piggybacking off the last question, I plan to take a gap year or two, but wasn't sure if a compliance role, litigation consultant role, or paralegal role is more suitable to really improve my law school prospects. Out of those three, is there one that would be the best or most transferable for law school?
Can I answer that? Because I have such strong feelings about this. So I would say there are two reasons, two things you should be thinking about getting a job. One is like, what's it going to give you? And then what's it going to do for your law school application process? I hope my colleagues will agree if I say, I think all jobs are helping you with your law school application chances. There's no job that I think like, that's it, that's what I need to see, you're in. And there's no job where I'm like, why did they do that? It's like, it's all combining together to add to your voice and add to what you're going to contribute in the classroom, as someone said earlier, and I can't remember who, but that's very important to the law school process, is the voice you bring. So any of those would be great preparation in terms of what they will give you and how it will contribute into the law school classroom. And I think you need to think about, what is it you want to get out of it? So do you feel like you want to go to law school, and then whatever. But if you feel like, I'm not sure what law is like, what it's like to practice law, then I would strongly recommend doing something that is law based, so you can really make sure this is the right path for you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Choose the position that best interests you without thinking of how it's going to look on a law school application, because any of those jobs are going to look great. So at the end of the day, choose what's going to make you happy and what you're most passionate about, not what you think is going to look best in our eyes.
Right. You definitely don't want to spend the year or two before law school being go into law school feeling like you've been burnt out the last year or 2 years, with a job that was way too much. So keep that in mind too.
I would just echo what my colleagues have said, Noelle, but also we do see a lot of students who may work as a paralegal at a law firm prior to coming to law school. But, as my colleagues have mentioned, perhaps that's because you don't know any attorneys and you don't know what does an attorney do all day, and you're trying to figure that out prior to going to law school. And, the expense of law school and the time of law school. So you want to be sure that you know, if you don't have any experience or you don't know of a lawyer, you want to work at a law firm to see what do lawyers do, that's a great way to spend a gap year.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, let's see. And I see a few hands raised. Yeah, Serena, do you have a question?
Yeah, for sure. I think for mine, it's really specific in terms of dual degrees. A lot of law school offer. I know all four of the schools here offer that, and to some extent, for students who are sort of considering that, what are some of the advice, and how does that process sort of look like for students applying? Because I know there are programs where you apply when you apply for law school straight away, right? Or there's programs where you apply once you've gotten into law school. Because for me, for example, I'm a pre-law student, but also I'm interested in business or international relations. So I may be interested in getting an MBA at the same time as a JD or a master in IR or something like that with a JD. So could like either any of y'all kind of speak of that?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. So at Boston College, we do have a few dual degree programs, and we have some dual degree programs with other universities in our area. For example, we have like a master's in public health, JD master's in public health. You can get your master's in public health at Tufts at the same time you're working towards your JD at Boston College. But we do have a JD MBA program, what you spoke of. You start at the law school first. And so get your feet on the ground in law school. And then after you are, in law school for your, say, first semester, then you can start applying out to the other schools. For example, the Carroll School of Management, which is on our main campus. And they generally will also take your LSAT scores instead of having to take the GRE and apply that way. So if you've been admitted to the Boston College Law School and you have started at the law school, and then you decide, I think I might like to get an MBA as well, that's completely fine. You work with our academic services department, and they will make sure your transcripts go over, and you do not have to take another exam. Generally, you do not have to take another exam to be admitted to that program.
So I'll jump in on this one too, and just say that at Hastings, even though we're a freestanding law school, we do have several joint JD MBA programs, one of which is with the Haas School at UC Berkeley. But we do recommend that you start law school first, mainly because we have a faculty advisor who kind of advises students who want to pursue multiple degrees. And I think having that guidance while you're in law school helps, makes you a more competitive business school applicant, especially in a really competitive pool like Haas has. So you could do it. You could apply to both the business school and law school simultaneously. But I do think you benefit more from kind of gaining from the wisdom that the faculty advisor has. And I think you also kind of stand out more in a competitive business school application pool when you're already in law school, because most other business school applicants don't have that distinction. Our other joint MBA program is with UC Davis. And we actually will allow people to do multiple degrees at other schools, even without formal arrangements. This year, we have a woman who applied to Hastings and was admitted to Hastings, but also was admitted to the business school at Notre Dame. And she's chosen to start business school first. And so we can be pretty flexible with students to kind of chart their own courses.
Oh, great. Thanks for that information too. And yeah, I definitely want to be cognizant of time and see we have about 2 minutes left. America, I'm going to bundle your question in the chat along with the other question about recommendations. So speaking generally about letters of recommendation, if anyone would want to share information about, let's see, first off, where did it go? Okay. Let's see. In terms of taking gap years between undergraduate school and law school, does that change the dynamics of letters of recommendations that would be hoped for or expected at for law school admissions? And sort of speaking about numbers of recommendations, what would be perspectives if someone submitted 2 letters of recommendation versus 4 letters of recommendation? And whoever would like to jump in, please feel free.
I'll jump in. I think the best advice is get the strongest letters of support you can. I do think it is always helpful if you possibly can get an academic letter that is strong and detailed to have that, because this is an academic undertaking that you're applying to. But there can be any mix, and whether you're coming straight through and have had jobs in undergrad, maybe you want an employer then too. So we like to hear from employers, we like to hear from faculty, but have it be the people who know you best and who are going to really go to bat for you. Other than that, I don't think there's a particular formula of who should write what. And if you have 4 letters, that's great, but make sure they're all doing different work. Don't just have people saying the same thing.
Yeah, I was looking for, as Sarah was talking, I was looking for, we did a webinar with a number of other law schools, specifically on letters of recommendation and on the resume, which this question isn't addressing. So I'll put that in the chat in the interest of time, and also just to get a different perspective from other panelists or other law schools that weren't featured on this panel.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time today to share this information with our students. It's just wonderful, great advice and insights that you've been able to provide, and we can't thank you enough. And we hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and